Pretty soon, you're going to see blue a little bit of everywhere. Hello and welcome to WJTS in.form. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Joining me in the studio is Tammy Lampert. She is the director for the Southwest Indiana Child Advocacy Coalition Center.
You got it.
Okay, SWICACC is the easiest way to say it.
You got it.
And today we're going to talk about blue, because coming up in April and throughout April will be Stand Up to Child Abuse nationally.
Yes.
Now, what does child abuse have to do with SWICACC?
So, child abuse. So, SWICACC, we are the agency that performs Child Advocacy Center services for children that are alleged to be victim of abuse. And so, it's crazy to me because research shows that 93% of especially childhood sexual abuse can be prevented. And I'm thinking if we could prevent 93%, I mean, that's almost eliminating it. And the way that we do that is we create awareness and we provide education. Okay, and so the bracelets, so April is National Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. And so we're doing, I think I had mentioned before, and if not, like 2018 is going to be just our big awareness year for the Child Advocacy Center. We want everybody to know that we have a Child Advocacy Center, that kids have a safe place to go and talk if somebody did something not okay. And so we are doing the blue Stand Up to Child Abuse bracelets that also have our website on them to get that conversation started and spread awareness throughout, I mean, like the entire region.
Now, child abuse is, how often does child abuse happen? How many kids are a year affected?
In the state of Indiana last year, there was over 10,500 Child Advocacy Center cases that were seen throughout the state. For SWICACC, we saw 384 last year.
Almost one a day.
Over one a day, yeah. And
yeah, 384, right.
And and this year we've already seen over 70 kids. Wow. And so we're only in March. It happens every day, it happens everywhere. And I think the scary thought is that, you know, up till recently, research shows that only 5 to 10% of kids even report. And so we're missing even more that are being abused, that are not coming forward.
Okay, now we are talking about child abuse. What is child abuse?
So we deal with children that are victim of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, if they witness a crime, if they witness domestic violence, drug-endangered children. Those are the types of cases that we see at the center.
And you're not alone in the work that you do. You're interviewing kids to help the police get a conviction, if that needs to be. But there's also organizations like Crisis Connection, local churches who are making strides towards stopping child abuse.
Absolutely, yes. Crisis Connection has their prevention education curriculums that they go to the schools, they talk to staff about. I talk to school staff and pretty much any group that will have me in regards to knowing what those signs and symptoms are of abuse, being a first responder to child abuse, being a mandated reporter in the state of Indiana, and cover all those kinds of topics just to create more awareness and educate.
Okay, now, these bracelets will be available, so you'll see them different places. And how much are they?
They're $1.
Okay,
they're $1. Yeah, and so they're $1 just to cover the cost. And the proceeds all go to SWICACC. And so what we're doing in the month of March is the bracelets are going out to our Department of Child Services offices, our law enforcement agencies, prosecutors' offices, Crisis Connection, any of our community partners that we work with through the Child Advocacy Center. And, you know, so that flyer says we're gearing up for April, because April's the big month for prevention. And then in April, we are looking for organizations, businesses, any type of community partner that wants to partner with us and have those bracelets available for their employees, or, you know, if it's a church, their congregation, to purchase for $1. And it's just to get that conversation started, you know, by having the bracelet that says Stand Up to Child Abuse. And by starting that conversation, we're increasing awareness. Okay,
now let's talk a little bit about child abuse. You know, sometimes you have to spank a child, I'm thinking. And I know that's probably politically incorrect, but that is kind of a form of discipline. But at what point is that child abuse? Now I'm concerned because I've spanked my kids.
It should never be excessive. It should never be where it leaves marks or bruises or welts or anything like that. There's a big difference in an open hand, you know, pat on the butt as a spanking, as opposed to a child having bruises and welts on their legs, on their torso, on their arms, grab marks, black eyes, bruises, just bruises and marks and things like that. That's excessive. That is abuse.
Okay, so if you're spanking a child, you know, on their butt, and they're wearing their clothes, and so they're not going to leave a mark to discipline them a little bit, or you have to maybe slap their hand because they're reaching for something they shouldn't. Some of that's safety. That might be okay. I'm not saying it's okay, but that might be.
Like I said, I mean, abuse, you know, we define that as, you know, where it's excessive and it causes some type of injury, whether that be a bruise, a mark, a broken bone.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it does go that far.
It is. It is very unfortunate.
Okay. So what happens when you see somebody trying to discipline their child in public?
If you're in a public place, like let's say you're at the store and you see somebody hit a child, that is not okay, call your police right away. Call 911 if you have to, so that somebody can get there immediately to protect that child.
Now, you used the word hit. Is that different than spanking? Or is that kind of a gray area?
It's kind of a gray area.
Okay.
I mean, you know, when I talk to kids, I say nobody should ever hit you, kick you, punch you, you know, things like that. There's a difference, like, you know, what we talked about with the open hand, you know, little smack on the butt, as opposed to a smack on the face, hitting the back, the legs, doing excessive hitting, things like that, leaving marks and bruises.
And people, you know, you may see somebody squeeze a child. That can be scary.
Yeah, that can be very scary, and that, I mean, that will cause an injury. It will cause bruises and things like that to the child too.
Now, these are physical abuses, but there is also mental abuse.
Yeah, there's definitely mental and emotional abuse. That's why if kids are witness to domestic violence, or, you know, they're a drug endangered child, things like that, we also do interviews with them to ensure their physical safety and their mental and emotional safety as well.
Okay, now, you mentioned that everybody is a reporter.
Everybody is a mandatory reporter in the state of Indiana.
Which means what?
Which means if you have any reason to suspect that there's abuse of a child, neglect of a child, that you're required by law to report it. And you can report it to the hotline number, which is 800-800-5556. I tell everybody whenever I do trainings to dual report, which means you report to the hotline, the Department of Child Services hotline, and to report to law enforcement, just to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks anywhere.
Okay. And it's unfortunately, you may have to interview kids who have been abused, which then leads to a conviction. And the idea behind SWICACC is that we don't have, let's say, the principal or a teacher and somebody else and then a policeman and then maybe a detective all interviewing this child at different times, which can be really scary for a child. This is a really nice place where they can go and be interviewed.
It is, yeah. It reduces the trauma to the child because they don't have to tell their story multiple times. The setting is much more comfortable, and, you know, we throw around trauma-informed, that terminology a lot, but it really is to where it's just a comfortable house setting. It's just the interviewer and the child, so they don't feel intimidated. There's not that authority figure. The other thing is that the interviewers are trained to not ask any kind of leading questions, to stay very neutral and be a fact finder. And so we're seeing a lot of confessions, which is awesome. And, you know, and part of that is that we have some really good detectives that are on board. And the other part is that in those interviews, we're able to elicit those details that the investigation team can use to get those confessions, to get convictions. There was a case that went to trial here in Dubois County a couple weeks ago and just got a sentence of like 52 years. And so for us, that's a huge victory, so that the child did get justice. The child will be kept safe. And not only will that child be kept safe, future victims will be kept safe also.
Right. And recently Mark Messmer was working on a bill to have, if a child is abused, that all the children are then, I guess, watched to make sure that they're not abused as well. They're treated kind of the same, where before it was just that one child that was singled out, I guess, in a way. Yeah,
and I don't know how the guidelines and the policies and everything work with that, but we've had cases where there may be, 6 kids in the home, but only 1 or 2 are removed because they were the ones that had the physical marks to show the abuse. And now they're saying, we need to look at all those kids. We need to make sure all those kids are safe. Just because they maybe didn't have those marks and bruises today doesn't mean that they weren't abused in the past.
Sure, right. Okay, so you're selling these for $1.
For $1.
These little bands are available, or you can obviously give more if you'd like. You can do anything you can to help SWICACC. But April is going to be a Stand Up to Child Abuse Month.
Yes.
And we thank you for coming in, Tammy.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Tammy comes in, well, about once a month. You'll be here mini shows here on 18 WJTS with Tammy Lampert with SWICACC, Southwest Indiana Child Advocacy Coalition Center. Is that right?
Center Coalition.
Okay,
So
all
close,
right.
so
I'm
close.
so close. SWICACC is the easiest way to say it. Tammy, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching WJTS in.form. We're local people watching local people.